Look at your wallet. Look at your bank balance. It feels safe, right? That number sitting quietly on your screen, unmoving, stable, reassuring. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The richest people on earth avoid holding cash like it as radioactive. While the middle class is taught to save money, the wealthy are taught something very different. Cash is not safety, it is silent loss. So why do billionaires, hedge fund managers, dynastic families, and institutional investors refuse to sit on piles of money? Why do they immediately move cash into assets, businesses, land, stocks, and even debt itself? And more importantly, what do they know that most people don't? Because if you follow the money, not the advice, you discover a hidden system where cash slowly decays. Purchasing power erodes, and those who hold it too long fall behind without even realizing it. Today, we're going to uncover the uncomfortable history of cash, the financial mechanics that quietly destroy its value, and the exact reason the rich treat money like a temporary parking spot, not a destination. And by the end of this story, you may never look at your savings account the same way again. To understand why the rich avoid cash today, we need to go back to a time when holding physical money actually made sense. Centuries ago, wealth meant gold coins, silver bars, and physical treasure. If you had money in your possession, you had power. Kings stored gold in vaults. Empires measured strength by how much precious metal they controlled. Merchants risked their lives transporting coin across oceans. Back then, money didn't lose value automatically. Gold didn't inflate itself. Silver didn't decay over time. But everything changed when governments realized something dangerous. They didn't need gold to create money. They only needed trust. This was the birth of modern fiat currency, money backed not by metal, but by government promise. At first, it seemed harmless, convenient, efficient, scalable, but the hidden consequence was massive. For the first time in human history, money could be created endlessly, and when supply becomes unlimited, value becomes unstable. That was the moment cash stopped being a reliable store of wealth and became a melting ice cube. Most people never noticed the shift, but the wealthy did. After World War II, global economies rebuilt using debt and monetary expansion. Central banks were given extraordinary power, control interest rates, print money, and stimulate growth. At first, inflation looked manageable, a few percentage points per year, barely noticeable, but compound inflation is ruthless. At just 3% inflation, your money loses half its purchasing power in about 24 years. At 7%, it happens in just 10 years. Now imagine holding millions or billions in idle cash. The wealthy quickly realized something shocking. The safest-looking asset was mathematically guaranteed to lose value, so they adapted. Instead of storing money, they began circulating it strategically, buying land, acquiring companies, investing in infrastructure, owning stocks, holding real assets that move with inflation instead of against it. Meanwhile, average workers were taught the opposite. Save your money, keep cash for safety, put it in the bank. The system quietly trained the public to hold the very thing elites were running away from. And that difference in behavior created a widening wealth gap that still grows today. By the late 20th century, a new financial philosophy dominated elite circles. Cash is fuel, not wealth. Cash exists only to be deployed. Here's how the rich changed the game. Instead of letting money sit, they moved it into assets that produce income, rental properties that pay monthly cash flow, businesses that generate profit, stocks that grow with corporate expansion, bonds that pay interest, private equity investments, infrastructure projects, intellectual property. They understood one brutal law of finance. If your money is not working, it is dying. Even billionaire Warren Buffett famously keeps limited cash reserves relative to total assets. Not because he dislikes liquidity, but because he understands opportunity cost. Every dollar sitting idle is a dollar not compounding elsewhere, and compounding is the real engine of wealth. Over decades, this behavior separated asset owners from wage earners. One group watched their money multiply. The other watched prices rise faster than their savings. Then came the crises. The dot-com crash, the 2008 financial collapse, the pandemic stimulus explosion, the fastest money printing event in modern history. Trillions of new dollars were injected into the global economy. And suddenly inflation was no longer theoretical. Groceries doubled. Rent exploded. Fuel prices surged. Interest rates spiked. People who kept cash saw their purchasing power collapse in real time. But asset holders experienced something very different. Real estate rose, stocks recovered and climbed. Hard assets inflated alongside currency. Once again, rich were shielded, not because they predicted crises, but because their money was already positioned outside cash. This wasn't luck, it was design. Here's the part nobody likes to talk about. Inflation is not just economic damage, it's a wealth transfer mechanism, from savers to asset owners, from wage earners to investors, from cash holders to debt holders. When currency weakens, debtors benefit because they repay loans with cheaper money. Asset owners benefit because asset prices inflate. Cash holders lose because purchasing power shrinks. The rich often use debt strategically. They borrow cheap money. By appreciating assets, let inflation reduce the real value of what they owe. Meanwhile, average people avoid debt, save cash, and unknowingly absorb inflation losses. It's not accidental, it's systemic. Banks tried to offer solutions: high-yield savings accounts, certificates of deposit, government bonds. But here's the catch: most safe returns barely keep up with inflation and often fall behind after taxes. So even when people think they're protecting money, they're just slowing the loss. The rich don't aim to preserve cash, they aim to escape it. Because they understand something most financial education systems never teach. The goal is not to store money, the goal is to own productive systems. Cash is not safety. Cash is decay in slow motion. We saw how fiat money transformed wealth storage, how inflation silently transfers purchasing power, and why asset owners consistently outrun savers. But now we go deeper. Because avoiding cash is only the surface strategy. Behind the scenes, the rich follow a much more advanced financial playbook, one that uses leverage, diversification, psychological discipline, and structural advantages to stay ahead of every crisis. This is where the real separation happens. And once you see it, you'll understand why most people feel like they're running on a treadmill, while a small minority keeps climbing higher without working harder. Here's the rule most people never hear: the rich don't chase money, they chase control of cash flow. There is a massive difference. Most workers earn money, save money, and protect money. The wealthy structure systems that produce money automatically, businesses that generate recurring revenue, real estate that pays monthly rent, dividend-paying stocks, royalties from intellectual property licensing agreements, infrastructure contracts, private investments with profit sharing. Instead of hoarding cash, they focus on ownership. Ownership gives them three advantages. 1. Inflation protection, because revenue rises with prices. 2. Tax efficiency, because assets unlock deduction and write-offs. 3. Compounding power, because income gets reinvested. Cash does none of this. Cash produces nothing. That's why it is temporary in elite portfolios. It is only held long enough to deploy into something productive. If this sounds familiar, that's because we've seen it before. In countries that experienced hyperinflation, Germany in the 1920s, Zimbabwe in the 2000s, Venezuela more recently, the pattern was identical. People who held cash lost everything. People who owned land, businesses, foreign assets, or commodities survived. History doesn't repeat perfectly, but it rhymes. Today we see record government debt, persistent inflation, pressure, currency devaluation cycles, central banks printing trillions, rising cost of living worldwide, and once again, asset prices climb while wages lag behind. This is not coincidence. It's the natural outcome of monetary expansion. The wealthy aren't predicting collapse. They're positioning for mathematical reality. So if the evidence is clear, why do most people still cling to cash? Because psychology is more powerful than math. Cash feels safe, assets feel risky. Watching numbers sit still in a bank account feels stable. Watching markets move feels stressful. But stability is often illusion. The wealthy understand volatility differently. They see temporary price movement as noise. They focus on long-term ownership value. While the public fears downturns, the rich see discounts. While others panic, so they accumulate. This emotional discipline is one of the biggest hidden advantages. The rich don't eliminate cash entirely, they use it strategically. Here's how. 1. Cash as opportunity capital. They keep limited reserves ready for market crashes and undervalued assets. When fear hits the market, cash becomes a weapon. They buy when others sell. 2. Cash as transaction tool. They use cash temporarily to move into deals, acquisitions, investments, and expansions. Then they convert it back into productive assets. 3. Cash as emergency buffer, not wealth storage. Even elites maintain liquidity, but it's a fraction of their total net worth. The bulk stays invested. This is the difference. The poor store wealth in cash, the rich store wealth in ownership. Here's another uncomfortable reality. The wealthy don't fear debt. They fear unproductive debt. They avoid consumer debt, but strategically use leverage for assets that generate income. Why? Because inflation works in their favor. When they borrow money at fixed interest rates and invest in appreciating assets, asset value rises, income increases, debt becomes cheaper in real terms. This is why billionaires often carry massive loan balances, not because they broke, but because leverage amplifies returns. Cash holders lose purchasing power. Asset-backed borrowers gain net worth. Again, the system rewards positioning, not saving. So why don't schools teach this? Why is financial education focused on budgeting instead of investing? Because the system needs stability. It needs workers to save money in banks, hold currency, fund government debt, provide liquidity, remain predictable. Asset ownership creates independence. And independence reduces dependence on institutions. That's not conspiracy, that's economic structure. Financial literacy changes behavior, and behavior shifts power. Now let's look forward. If inflation continues even modestly over the next decade, your money will buy less food, less housing, less healthcare, less education, less freedom. Meanwhile, asset prices will likely keep rising. The gap will widen. Those who own productive assets will gain leverage. Those who store cash will struggle to catch up. The question becomes uncomfortable but necessary. Which side of that divide will you be on? Let's simplify everything into 3 powerful truths. Cash is meant to move. Wealth is meant to compound. The rich don't store money. They store income-producing systems. Working harder does not protect against currency decay. Positioning your money correctly does. The rules of money have changed. Those who adapt thrive. Those who don't fall behind quietly. Here's the warning most people never hear. The biggest financial danger today is not market crashes. It's doing nothing. It's sitting comfortably while purchasing power disappears. It's mistaking stability for security. Because the richest people on earth already made their decision. They chose ownership. They chose movement. They chose assets over idle cash. The question is, will you? If this video opened your eyes, don't let the information die here. Subscribe for more deep financial breakdowns. Like this video so more people learn what schools never teach. And comment below, do you think cash is still safe, or is it becoming the biggest financial trap of our time? Your future decisions start with awareness. And now, you see the game.